So today I'm going to go through a little cleanup on this Kiyohime maple. This is about almost the middle of November now. It still hasn't lost all its leaves, so I'm going to pick all these leaves off of it. I'm going to clean up any other crud that's on it, trim the branching a little bit, mainly just to find twigs to get them looking nice. I'm going to clean up the moss surface a little bit. I'm going to get rid of a little bit of the extra moss, and definitely around these roots I'm going to clean that up so that I can see the nabari for the winter image. I'm going to do this mostly in real time, so I'm not going to mess with a bunch of editing. You're kind of just stuck with whatever I happen to say, so plenty of outtakes and bloopers in this one. This might be a little bit of a long video, but I'll just get to it. I also have a little bit of wire I'm going to take off of this. Not that you can see it very much. I'll move the camera a little bit as I go too. During this time of year, I bring in some of my dwarf maples, like this Kiyohime. I bring in pretty early, actually, before it really gets nasty outside, because this one in particular has dieback every year, and I'm trying to get it to where it has really nice foliage for the upcoming year. This last year we had kind of a late cold frost freeze thing, and it suffered foliage wise. What I would do a lot of years is actually just remove all that foliage just to make nice new fresh foliage. But I decided for the health of the tree last year I wasn't going to do that, so I was stuck with pretty dingy looking foliage for a lot of the year. So next year I'd like it to be really quite nice. I'm going to try to get this set up really well for the year. I won't be taking it out next year until the danger of frost is really gone, so it might be spending a little bit extra time in the greenhouse. I think that would make it somewhere around April I might be taking it out. April or even May at the latest, depends on the weather. This wire that I'm taking off was just to guide a couple of the branches that I wanted to move around in the crown, because the crown had a couple of bare sections, and that was actually due to the dieback. They're mostly wired into place, but the last thing that I want is some wire scarring on what I'm trying to make look like an old tree. Old trees don't tend to have a lot of wire scarring on them. Young trees that haven't grown out yet do have that. At least in my experience, that's what it's looked like to me. Okay, wiring is clipped off and done. I'm just going to go through and take and simplify some of this a little bit. I'll just start with the lowest branches. You know what, that branch, that low branch, is pretty dang nice. Not a whole lot that I got to do with this. Really, it's just taking off a couple of these longer pieces. I'm also going into the crevices under here. When I say crevices, I mean more like what I would call armpits. So these are the points where two branches emanate. Some of these branches that I'm working on are really just to find twigs. Yeah, not a lot to do on this. This is nice. What I found so far is mainly just a little bit of dead twigs. Very ends, like right here. able to move up through this pretty quick. So I'm doing the upper portions first because a lot of these pieces are falling down onto the soil surface, and then I'll go back into the actual surface of the pot and clean that up and make that look nice. That way I'm not having to redo the work that I've already done from the top. As I'm getting into the top here, the growth is a little bit dense. Well, it's more dense than the bottom at least. And also, I'm not seeing quite as much dieback up at the top. This has gotten a little bit better light than the bottom has. But this Kiyohime, being a dwarf, it likes to grow out from the bottom more so than the top. So I can actually keep the top as dense as I like, and the bottom's still going to continue to want to push out growth to the side. At least that's what I've seen from growing this over the years. I've had this little maple for a good probably 15 years. And it's got a bit of a graft bulge here. But that's starting to kind of age a little bit. Starting to get a little bit of the tan gray bark up above that graft bulge, but you can see a definite line here where the graft happened. So yeah, still some work left to do on this maple for sure, but with any bonsai, that really is the case. There's always something to be done. Bonsai's never really finished. As I'm going across the crown here, I'm taking and trying to keep a mounded shape on top without cutting it down too much. So I'm barely touching any of these top pieces in favor of being able to cut down some of the other ends of it. So as I'm doing this, you notice that I'm not really looking at any particular side completely. I'm really just going around the whole thing and doing it. And when I'm doing some of my final touch-ups, I really just turn the tree around and see everything. And kind of get at the height that I need to. Yep, I think I'm liking that for now. So what I'm going to do is actually uncover a little bit of this root mass here. And the root mass is very hidden by all of this moss. It actually comes out to about here on this side. Over there. And I can feel where the hard parts of the roots are It's about the size of a large grapefruit. So start by just kind of scraping away the thick parts of the moss, and as I get down to it, I'm actually going to probably take a toothbrush and go and scrape off these bits of moss that I can't quite get to. This way it doesn't climb up too far up the trunk if possible, and it will be a fight to keep this moss down over the winter time also, because it's a prime time of the year around here for moss to grow. Really, it's a prime time for anywhere for moss to grow right now. So in places where you wouldn't normally even see moss growing, you'll be able to find it right now. Also, this moss retains too much moisture for this time of year for what this plant needs. It doesn't have the leaves that are having the water exchange. It's not losing all of that water through the leaves at this time of the year, so I really don't have a need to keep the roots that moist. This tree would be in the greenhouse for this winter, so I'm not going to worry about tilting it to keep the water out of the pot. But if I do have it outside, which I have before, kept it outside for the winter, if I were to keep this outside for the winter, I would definitely be figuring out what to do with all this moss, because it would need to drain. The pot would need to drain. It's a very shallow pot, and the water just kind of sits in all of the roots if it doesn't have a way to drain. Okay, all I had to do is just clip off one little crossing root that I didn't like, and all the rest of this is close enough to the edge to me. Yep, just about out to there. I'm just feeling for the hard parts of the roots. Yeah, that's pretty good. Just give that a go with the toothbrush. You notice there's also a lot of darkness here. The parts that were wet are going to be darker. Also, they don't get the sunshine, so they don't really silver up. In fact, what many people will do with these hard parts of the roots in the wintertime is apply some lime sulfur to it, which gives it an artificial whiteness. They say it bleaches it, but it really is just a surface whitening. It's not really appearing to do a permanent thing to the color of the roots. And I say that because all of this dark section here, I had used that lime sulfur technique on it during the summer, and then the moss grew on it, and it's back to the same exact color that it was before I lime sulfured it. So you can lime sulfur it if you want. I think for the purpose of this video, I'll show you what the lime sulfur will look like on the roots. It really changed the look of it quite a bit. Okay, while I'm at that, I'm also going to trim up the moss a little bit. Now, when I say trim it, I'm literally going to cut the moss. What I found is that moss being this fluffy tends to hold a lot of water inside of it. So I'm actually going to trim that down and just make it kind of even. It'll look a little bit funky for a little bit, but I found that the moss does grow right back. So I'm just going to use a pair of scissors for that. And avoiding my fingers, just taking and flattening off the moss. If I felt like displaying this, I would completely replace the moss. No, I don't think I'm going to do that. At least I'm not going to be displaying it in a show, is what I mean. So I'll get all this moss trimmed up, and then halfway through winter, really in about a month, it'll be completely green again. I I guess technically winter hasn't even started. December is when the winter solstice is. Keep getting my months mixed up and my seasons mixed up. December 21st, I believe, is the longest day of the year. At least for the northern hemisphere where I am. Days already seem... Did I say longest day of the year? It's the shortest day of the year. But the days have already been seeming to get really short around here. In fact, in about an hour, I'll have to have all my lights on here in the greenhouse to be able to work. There's also a little bit of remnants of the organic fertilizer that I use on here. Up on the top here, this little kind of cruddy section is that. It's not really hurting anything, so I'm not really worried about it. But if I felt like making it really clean, I would definitely take that section off too. The organic fertilizer actually does kill the moss off. So, again, that would be something that I would replace if I wanted it to look really pretty. Okay, that's close enough. So now I can just even it out. All I'm doing is just kind of pressing to make an even edge around the moss here. And pressing all the soil surface down. Give it one final wash here. And then I'm going to take a hose to it, just kind of see if I can rinse this a little bit. And then I'll show you what the lime sulfur does to it. I'll need to clean up this pot at some point too. It's got a little bit of hard water stains, or not stains, but like mineral deposits, I guess, on it. It's actually pretty easy to take off with a little bit of attention. The reason why it's on there is because the moss on the edge really collects a lot of water and it just kind of stays there. See if I have any water in my hose here. A little bit. Okay, so for the lime sulfur, I'm just going to show you undiluted lime sulfur on there. Just for the hay of it. So when you put it on there, it's this really sulfury yellow color. It's not attractive, does not smell good, that's for sure. And then as it dries out, it turns like a powdery white color. Also not necessarily attractive, but you can tone it down a little bit by taking a dry toothbrush and just kind of scraping off the powderiness of it. And it'll take this kind of dark color and make it a little bit more even with the trunk. In fact, I'll go up the trunk just a little bit also with this. Lime sulfur is good for bugs, to keep the bugs during the dormant season from coming out too much. Overwintering bugs will show up again in spring in force, because they'll be all ready to go as soon as your trees are. So if you have overwintered bugs on a nice healthy tree and it starts sprouting all that new growth, bugs, especially aphids, will go to town on that new growth and really suck a lot of the life out of the tree. It's not a good look. So this will also kind of soften up the green color here. I actually don't do this very much. This is really just for the purpose of the video. And just kind of unevenly go up this part of the trunk here, because I'm going to go back and hit it with a toothbrush. And this would be a little bit easier if it was sprayed, but since I'm going 100% dilution, 100% no dilution, I just want to get this kind of on there real quick. And that kind of having an uneven transition, blending it out as it kind of hits the edge of where I'm applying it. Alright, so that'll start to dry here, and it'll be much easier to see if I were to put some heater type stuff on it. Okay, so that's drying and turning gray already, and you can see right at the edge of the root, here's a root for example, all this hard section here is other roots, but most of that is just soil surface. So I can kind of clean in between the roots there so it's not quite as hideous. This is very much like, I don't know, zombie drool or something. When I repot this next year, I'm also going to be able to clean up these roots quite a bit more even than this. Pretty nice and barre on this guy. You can kind of get an idea of what I mean by the white color being a little bit odd. I don't know how much it fits with all of this going on there, but people do like to have the trunk of these look really old. So, yeah. Yeah, it's drying out. Bet you if I put a heater on it, it'd dry pretty quick. I'll pause for a minute. Alright, that's the best it's going to get for right now. This yellow will continue to dry out a little bit. It'll be a little bit closer to this white color down here. You notice this completely dark color at the bottom is gone almost completely white. And as it goes up, it's starting to lighten up a little bit. And you can't tell as much difference between the fat part below the graft and the green, thinner part above the graft. And then as it goes up the branches, it's already drying out quite a bit there. Well, anyways, this is why I don't really care for putting lime sulfur on it, because it's not a super satisfying result to me, at least. I'll back it up and let you see on the tree, let you see what you think yourself. Well, there you go. That's Kiyohime Japanese maple. I did a little bit of winter cleanup to it, got it ready to be sitting here in the greenhouse for the 4 or 5 months of winter that we're going to have. I can also take it out and display it every now and then. That moss that's on there, all of this pile used to be on top of the pot, so all of that is now just cut down flat. And the soil surface is nice and even now compared to what it was, but not as green. That's alright. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. This is just a cleanup on this Japanese maple, and I do this typically before I store it for the winter time in the greenhouse here. It's an unheated greenhouse unless I'm using the heater just to keep myself comfortable while I work in here. It's nice twiggy growth on here, which I really like. It's very small twigs, which is really nice. It hasn't thickened a whole lot, so it has a really fine texture. I really love it from about here up. The base of it, down at the very bottom, I like that quite a bit too. The part that is a little difficult for me is this middle part where it has the graft union. That's pretty noticeable, especially when you see the angle of the cut there. Over the years, that will look a little bit better, but I think what I need to figure out is how do I keep that bulge from being so much there. I do have kind of a hip here where it cuts in. It's been really thinner there. I could potentially do some scarring in a couple of spots. Maybe might take a little bit in order to fix that up, but I can do a little bit of scarring on this side and on this side to reduce the appearance of that hip. It'll kind of make it a little bit more of an even transition there. So yeah, this one it's in a decent pot, but for me, I'm trying to transition all the trees that I want to keep from having a definite front, which an oval has a definite front or a back. I'm trying to transition from that to more of a round so I can display it any way I want. On a tree that I like, I don't want to have just one side that I look at. So on this one, for example, I actually really like that quite a bit. Not that you can see too great, but I like the openness. I like that you can see inside. I also like that side, that side. I like all the different sides of this maple, so I figure why keep it in a pot that restricts me. It's too nice of a tree to do that. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. I'm not always at the same time for my uploads, so if you want a notification when the upload happens, go ahead and hit that bell and see it right when it uploads. I'll have some more trees that I'm going to work on for winter prep, and I'm going to be bringing actually a lot here into the greenhouse pretty soon.